Tribunal. I'm Limina. Welcome back to our fifth in our Lonesome Dove LIMIN-tations series. Joined again with my husband, Chris. Today, I decided the part of the book we're going to read from the tetralogy. And I decided on one from the Streets of Laredo, which was the second book released, but the fifth chronologically. And I absolutely love the character of PeaEye. And so interesting. So the first thing about PeaEye is that because I had originally listened to this book rather than read it, and Lonesome Dove, I thought it was P, the letter, and then I, the letter. And so it's actually P, like the vegetable, and then I, like the body part, which is kind of, not the nicest. And so maybe that colored my view of him in the first instance.
I think maybe his name is a take on, I don't know if he has, beady eyes, key eyes.
Yeah.
They don't really delve that much into the character, really.
Yeah,
into the origins of his name.
Yeah. And it's interesting, on the sign, he shows up as P, just the one P, and they mostly call him PeaEye Parker. So that's neat. But I think this man is one of the most underestimated men and overlooked people in the group. And I just think he's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, and so I guess it's interesting, and it doesn't surprise me that you've keyed in on this character of PeaEye, because for one, he is the unsung hero of the story in a lot of ways. So I guess, and I know you haven't watched the TV version of the show, which I have multiple times, but even in the TV version, he's still he's just like an auxiliary character, right? And they go into him a little bit, but not that much. Still clearly throughout the whole story, it's Gus McRae and Woodrow Call. They're the heroes of the book. They do all the great stuff, right? But PeaEye, he's always there, lurking in the background, doing great things. He's the steady man. He's the guy getting it done, picking up the pieces in the end in a lot of ways. But it doesn't surprise me that you've glommed on that sort of character, right?
He's the workhorse. There's lots of different type of horses. I don't know much about horses, but I know there's the horses that are, carrying the cavalry. I know there's the horses in the parade that are all dressed up. And then I know in the background there's the pack horse that just does the work. And I think he's a workhorse. And I guess that really connects to my personality. I'm not saying I'm a hero. I'm just saying that I understand that, where I just plod along and I get things done, and I'm the one that is, I feel reliable, and I feel reliability is important, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting that in the books, PeaEye, he's always kind of described as that, he's the level, steady man, but he's also he's not a quick thinker. He's not a quick talker. Pete even admits he's not the best in battle. He's an okay shot with a pistol, okay with a rifle if he's got time to take careful aim and whatnot. Never been married, always been a bachelor.
Doesn't like change.
Doesn't like to talk about it. Yeah, he's this real super low key type of guy.
I don't know anyone like that.
And it even goes on he's kind of handy with some tools when it comes to making horseshoes. He's actually a really good blacksmith, they say in the books.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the one thing he's good at. Not a quick thinker. He's not the quick flamboyant, guy like Gus and Call and some of the other characters. But when you talk about what PeaEye ends up doing in the end, and it's kind of cool how the author Larry McMurtry, how he circles around and he eventually puts P up on that pedestal where P actually doesn't want to be. I think it's pretty interesting.
Maybe we should read it, and then we'll go. So again, it's really actually near the end of the whole series. So again, Dead Man's Walk is 1, Comanche Moon 2, Lonesome Dove is actually the 3rd, and then Streets of Laredo is the last book. So this is the last book, and the part where Chris will be reading again because he's a way better reader than me out loud, and then and it's more near the end. So in this, they've him and Call have left to go after this vigilante who's killing people. He is a killer, and he's been robbing trains, and they've been tasked to go after him. There's a lot of stuff that happens precursing that I don't want to really get rid of, but PeaEye is with another fella, and they're pinned down by this villain. Okay. Is how it's set up.
We'll just start right at the back part then?
Right at that part, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit lengthy. So, well, I guess to give a little bit more background, I guess. So in this book, so Captain Call, he's basically like a hired. He gets hired all the time to go after these bandits, right? Because he's the famous ranger. Call always expects and PeaEye to just come along with him, right, and help him out. Mm-hmm. And Call's usually pretty rude about it, and like he barely asks PeaEye. He just says, "Hey, show up here at this time. We're going to go chase down these bandits."
And PeaEye's married with kids by now, right?
PeaEye's a dad. He's got 5 kids. He's got a farm to take care of and a wife who teaches school and all these other responsibilities. The captain couldn't care less about any of this stuff. Totally just ignores it. And it's really starting to kind of weigh on PeaEye because he's kind of like getting a little ticked off. Like, you know what? I don't want to say no to the captain. Don't want to disappoint the captain, but he keeps, forgetting that I got all these other responsibilities. Yet duty is extremely important to PeaEye.
And loyalty.
And loyalty, right? He doesn't want to be disloyal. But anyway, this kind of describes a bit, that duality in PeaEye. And so he ends up going to help the captain. This bandit, who turns out to be way more of a foe than either of them ever imagined. He's got PeaEye kind of pinned down. He's just killed PeaEye's other partner, the city guy, Brookshire. And so now, here, I'll see if I can figure out where to start off. So Brookshire, the guy from Brooklyn, he's the accountant, the nerdy guy. He's just been killed, and so now.
You should read that part up to before Brookshire walks off.
Oh, you want to go before Brookshire gets killed?
Yeah. I think that brings a lot to the sort of situation, and I've got some things I'd like to talk about with that because I think it's really important to me. Thank you.
Okay, well, without taking too long, so Brookshire. The New York accountant, he's tired of freezing his ass off out in the middle of Texas, nowhere, and he's had enough. He's just ready to walk off. He doesn't care if the killer shoots him or whatever. And so PeaEye finally just, so you'll find places to it. So we'd best go back to the riverbed, PeaEye said. No, let him come and kill us, Brookshire says. He's going to kill us anyway. He knows right where we are. I guess he's listening to us. He's got all our ammunition and our food. He's just playing with us now. We don't have a chance, and he knows it. I spent nothing but cold nights since I got to Texas, and I'll be damned if I want to spend another cold night squatting on my heels just to get shot at in the morning. He can shoot me now and spare me the shivering. No, Brookshire, don't give up, PeaEye said. Come back to the riverbed with me. We're armed still. We're still alive, and there's a chance. There's 2 of us, and there's just 1 of him. We might beat him yet, or the captain might show up in the morning and scare him off. Right? PeaEye's he's not giving up. What if he's already killed the captain, Brookshire asked. I expect he has myself. The captain's 5 days late, and you said he's never late. Well, he ain't usually, PeaEye admitted. The thought that the captain might be dead had occurred to him too, but he did his best to push that thought away. People had thought the captain was most likely dead many times during the Indian Wars. He had feared it on a number of occasions himself, and yet the captain had always appeared. If they didn't give up, the captain might yet appear. Let's go to the creek, PeaEye said. Try it one more night, Brookshire. If we go to him, he'll shoot us. But if we go back, he might let us go. Go back where? Brookshire asked. There's nothing to go back that way except Chihuahua City, and we'd starve long before we get to Chihuahua City. I'd rather be shot than starve. I'd even rather be shot than shiver all night. I'm tired of this shivering, and I'll tell Joey Garza so if I see him. I'll tell Colonel Terry something too if I make it back to the office. Joey Garza can rob all the trains he wants to. Ned Brookshire is resigning. I may never hold another job with the railroad, but I'll be damned if I'll wander around Mexico any longer freezing to death. Brookshire meant it too. He had blown away, but he wasn't a hat. He could try to walk back. If he didn't make it, so be it. The whole adventure had been a terrible mistake. His wife Katie had died while he was on it. Captain Call, the manhunter, everyone said he was infallible. He had been pretty fallible in this instance. Brookshire saw no reason to suffer passively anymore. He felt for sure he could walk 3 days even without food. He could make it to the village by the river. Then he was going to rent a buggy and drive somewhere or catch a train, one that would take him to New Orleans or Chicago and then home. He had seen the Great West and he didn't like it. There was plenty of accountants in New York, and Colonel Terry would have no trouble finding a man to replace him. Perhaps next time, the colonel would know to keep his accountants where they belonged, in the office with ledgers. PeaEye knew he ought to knock Brookshire out with a gun barrel and make an effort to save him. The captain might show up at any time. Joey Garza might lose interest in the game and ride off. Brookshire, just wait one more night, PeaEye said. There's 2 of us. We might beat him. The captain might come. We might just get off a lucky shot. We'd do better sticking together. Just wait one more night. I appreciate the thought, Brookshire said, but I've waited, and now I'm going. Killer or no killer. I can follow this river as well as the next man, I guess. Maybe I'll get through. If I don't get through, all I ask is you send my love to my sister. Mm-hmm. On impulse, he grasped PeaEye's hand and shook it hard. Well, I don't know your sister, PeaEye said. I wouldn't know how to get word to her. Well, her name's Matilda Morris, and she lives in Avon, Connecticut, Brookshire said. I regret that I had no time to write her before I left. Colonel Terry wanted me on the next train, and that was that. He cocked both barrels of the big shotgun, and he walked past PeaEye out of the camp. PeaEye didn't hit him. Knocking men out was a tricky business. He might misjudge the lick and hit too hard, in which case he would just cause unnecessary suffering, and he couldn't bring himself to do it. Brookshire went boldly out of camp. He walked along at a good pace, trying to maintain a staunch attitude. Sometimes in Brooklyn, if he was on the streets late and had to walk past bullies or louts, he found that the best method was just to walk along boldly and not give the bullies or louts the time of day. Mm. Perhaps the same method would work with this Garza boy, if it was the Garza boy who had killed their animals. He did wish he were walking along the orderly streets of Brooklyn, with solid brick houses on either side of him. Just thinking of those solid brick houses in Brooklyn caused him to be seized by a moment of almost overwhelming longing to be back in his own place once more. If he could be in his own place, he felt that life would swing back into firm shape in no time, even without his dear Katie. So Brookshire had to choke down his longing, though. He was in Mexico, not Brooklyn. He kept walking at a fast clip. If attacked, he planned to give a good account of himself and try at least to injure his assailant. But when Brookshire, walking smartly along, heard the click of a hammer, it was just behind his head, close enough that whoever held the pistol could have stuck it in his hip pocket. One more mistake on my part, Brookshire thought. He whirled, and he saw the boy standing an arm's length away, his pistol pointed at Brookshire's face. Brookshire knew he had no chance to swing up the big shotgun, and he was so numbed by his own folly that he didn't even try. Well, at least I've seen your face, he said. Joey Garza didn't answer. He pulled the trigger instead. One shot did it. He liked to be economical. When PeaEye heard the pistol shot, he knew the battle was over for Mr. Brookshire. He turned and hurried back to the little creek with the steep walls. The little creek was the only place that offered him any protection. There had been no blast from the big shotgun. The Garza boy was unscratched. PeaEye knew he would have to fight him alone. Should I keep going?
Mm-hmm. Like all of it, yeah.
Okay. So PeaEye, he stayed in the creek for an hour, then snuck back to camp, and with his pocket knife he began to cut strips of horse meat off the haunch of Brookshire's horse. He knew that he might be in for a long siege. In Montana, he had walked nearly 100 miles with only a few berries to eat. He didn't intend to get that hungry again. There was no need to either, with 4 dead animals right there. He sliced and sliced with his little knife, and before he went back to the creek, he had almost a week's supply of horse meat stuffed into his shirt. If he had to walk out and make a long detour, at least he would have food. So PeaEye wanted to last, and he meant to last. He had Lorena and his 5 young children to think of. He could not just hand himself up for slaughter as Brookshire had. His chances might be slim, but for the sake of his family, he had to fight the deadly boy as hard as he could. As the cold hours passed, PeaEye had a terrible longing to be with Lorena and his children one more time. He wished they could all be together in their kitchen, talking. He imagined Lorena with her coffee cup and him with his. Clary would have brought in the milk, and the boys would be there in their chairs, a little sleepy probably, and Laurie would be in her cradle, which he could rock with his foot. PeaEye wanted badly to tell them how sorry he was that he had left them. He wanted them to know how much he regretted putting Captain Call first and not them. It had been a terrible wrong. He wanted them to know that never again would he put any duty before his duty to them, to Lorena and his children. He felt a great sadness at not being able to let his family know what he was feeling. If he was killed, they would never know how much he loved them and how much he missed them. They would never know what he was feeling at this moment. In his sadness at not being able to say to his family what he so badly needed to say to them, PeaEye began to cry. He didn't know how he could have persuaded himself to leave them, and yet he had. If only it was himself having to pay for his mistake, he could have lived with it and died with it. But the bitterest knowledge was that his wife and children would be the ones having to pay for his error. No doubt they were paying already, and had been paying since the day he left the farm. The thought he found the hardest to bear was that they might never know how much he loved them, or how keenly and how terribly he missed them. He had left them, though, and he could not undo that fact. All he could do was clutch his rifle and hope that somehow he could prevail when the killer came. He had never risen higher than a corporal in his years with the Rangers. He knew he wasn't smart or an exceptional fighter like the captain or like Gus McRae. But in this last fight, he had to be better than he had been. He had to fight well, and he had to for his family's sake. The long night passed slowly. PeaEye was shivering in the cold dawn when he saw Famous Shoes come along the creek. Is Brookshire dead, he asked when Famous Shoes arrived. Yes, Joey shot him, Famous Shoes said. When's he coming to kill me then, PeaEye asked. He says if you give him your boots, he'll let you go, Famous Shoes said. He doesn't think that you will follow him without your boots. PeaEye considered that a poor dodge. He didn't entirely trust Famous Shoes anyway. The old man's services had always been up for sale to the highest bidder. PeaEye did not intend to give up his footgear. Why didn't he kill you, PeaEye asked. He doesn't want to kill me. I am too old, Famous Shoes said. Captain Call is in Okinawa, but Joey shot his leg off. He thinks the captain might die. It was your woman who brought him to Okinawa. Lorena, PeaEye said, severely startled. Are you sure? It is your woman. She has blonde hair, Famous Shoes said. She cut the captain's leg off. Joey saw it. And then she brought the captain to Okinawa. Okinaga. Well, I swear, PeaEye said. I wonder who's got the children. He was so surprised by the news that he almost forgot the danger of the moment. Joey wants me to bring him your boots, Famous Shoes reminded him. If the rascal wants my boots, let him come and get them, PeaEye said. The knowledge that his wife was less than a day's ride away filled him with hope. If he could outfight the killer, he could look on Lorena's face once again. It was a chance. He meant to use every ounce of fight he had in him to beat the killer and get back to his wife. Long ago, Gus McRae had teased the Rangers by calculating how much fight each man had in him, as if fight could be measured like oats or something else that could be placed on a scale. So Gus said, Call, now he's about 98% fight. Take away the fight and he'd be so weak he couldn't mount his horse, Gus said. But that's unusual. I'm only about 45% fight myself. And P, I expect you're about 12% or so. And old Dietz, he's about 15. 12% didn't sound like too much to P, but he resolved to use every oat of it to struggle past the killer and get to the river where Lorena was. If she was there, it was because she had come to get him and take him home. She must have traveled all that way just to bring him home. It was amazing to PeaEye that Lorena would go to all that trouble just for him. Mm. But since she had, he meant to see that she hadn't wasted her traveling. Good part.
Yeah.
So it's quite a reflection, right, on a guy like PeaEye, Mr. Average, Mr. Quiet, Mr. Slow Thinking, Mr. Mediocrity. This is what it kind of takes for him to kind of rise to the challenge, right? But he's kind of, it's cool how he's incrementally stepping up to the challenge as he goes along. But it's that final thought of his wife being that close and wanting to see his family again that just literally turns him into Superman.
Well, he's risen to so many challenges previously and run in and done things without thought. And he's just so underestimated. It's like, oh, it's just P. He's only a so-so shot. But they always say, if you've left him, if you give him a task and you let him go to it, he's methodical, trustworthy, and does a good job, right? But it's always this thought of like, well, if you don't tell him what to do, he might not do it, and that sort of idea. But I don't necessarily think that was true. I think some people just got an idea of who he was in his head, and because he's so slow and methodical and he doesn't add a lot, and it takes him a while sometimes to get to things, that he's just been overlooked a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess leading up to that, should we see how PeaEye finally takes down this bandit?
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, that's kind of one of the bravest and best moments out of most of these books. And there's a number of really good moments in this book of bravery, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so yeah, PeaEye's there. He's thinking of his wife. He's not backing down. He's not giving this young killer his boots. So before he had gone 2 more steps, so this is Joey Garza thinking now. Before he had gone 2 more steps, he heard PeaEye running behind him. Even though he was running in his stocking feet, PeaEye made a lot of noise. He was running towards the dead man. A moment later, Famous Shoes saw Joey stand up. And when Joey stood up, PeaEye began to shoot at him with his rifle. Joey Garza looked startled. He had not expected to be charged by the old deputy. Mm. He didn't even have his rifle. He was on his horse. That was Joey. But all he had was his pistol. And so he leveled it at PeaEye and began to shoot. Famous Shoes, who was watching off to the side, saw that at least 2 of Joey's bullets hit PeaEye, but PeaEye was still running, and he was almost to Brookshire's corpse, where the shotgun was laying. Joey shot at PeaEye again, but this time he missed. Joey became nervous. Why hadn't the old man fallen? He knew he had hit him twice solidly, but still he ran. Joey shot twice more, but both times he missed. So now he's getting rattled. PeaEye ran as he had never run before. He fired as he ran. He wished he could fly so as to get to the big gun faster. He felt that he was running to Lorena and his children. He saw Joey shooting, but he didn't feel the bullets when they struck him. He ran as fast as he could. He fired the rifle, but only in hopes of distracting the young killer. Mainly, he ran, his eyes fixed on the spot where Famous Shoes had paused. Only at the last moment, with PeaEye still coming, did Joey remember that the big shotgun, he had left it with the body, and the old ranger was almost there. The fact that he had made such a simple, stupid error unnerved Joey. He shot once more, but only hit the running man in the foot. The running man was very close, and he should not have missed him, yet he had missed him. Joey couldn't understand his own error. He had left a loaded gun by a corpse. It was a big, ugly gun, not worth keeping, but he should not have left it. His pistol was empty, and all he could do was flee. As he turned to run for his horse, he saw the old deputy drop his rifle and scoop up the big gun. Then the heavy shot cut his back, and he stumbled and fell. He sprang up and kept running, but he saw over his shoulder that the old man was still running towards him, holding the big shotgun. Joey was leaping for his horse when PeaEye shot again. This time the heavy bullets ripped his legs. In his pain, he almost went over his horse, but he managed to hang in the saddle. He looked back and saw that the deputy had turned and picked up his rifle. There was no time to free the Mauser. The deputy might kill his horse if he didn't flee. He ducked onto the far side of his horse and put the horse into a run. PeaEye shot the cantle of the saddle. Before PeaEye could aim again, Joey was racing away through the sage. Soon he was out of range, and he clung to the safe side of his horse, expecting that the deputy would shoot again and that his horse would fall, but the deputy didn't shoot again. Joey was bleeding from his shoulders to his heels, but he clawed himself back into the saddle and hung on.
Wow.
So yeah, what a moment of bravery, eh?
Yeah, what an intense scene too, right? Like, oh, there's just so much. I honestly think he's so underestimated too, and it was so brave that just, I just think how much a good relationship can lift somebody and provide them purpose and precision and drive, right? Like that it just is to me so amazing how his thoughts just pulled him in to do the hard thing. Here's the thing, he's underestimated himself. I'm not very smart. I'm only 12%. Like he takes everything that people have said to him on board as fact. Like I'm pretty much nothing, but I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
For this because this is everything, and I have to make it up to them because I let them down. I just want to look on their face, and I think too when he finds out Lorraine is there too, she's so loyal to him. Like they're a good couple together. They bring out the best in each other, and they're so proud of each other, right?
Like Lorena's like, she's like this 10, right? And he's like a 2. he figures that he's way out of her class, but she picks him in the end because he's that steady guy, right? But I like how they put it together here, and it really shows that PeaEye, he's like the only guy who actually figures out here in the end how to beat this, this slick young killer, Joey Garza. And P figures it out that the way to beat him is to get him rattled. Joey's not expecting this old man to just start charging him like crazy and start shooting off. Like Joey's not used to that. He's used to sitting back, picking people off. He's not used to this, like a guy as ballsy as this, just charging him out of nowhere, right? And the bullets are just passing through him, and P's running like a guy possessed.
And he's out of his element too, right? Like he's a rifle. He's a good shot with the rifle and the scope and all the tech, right? But he's not so good at other places when it's just one-on-one. He's actually good at killing people from far away where he's not in danger, where he's never rattled, right?
Well, it's funny, so I'll see if you remember this. So back to Lonesome Dove, and there's a comment that that Call actually makes, or it's a thought that Call has in the book. So Call is like, he's thinking about, his guys and all this and that. And he's thinking about, like, PeaEye has plenty of experience. And he said, like, PeaEye's been rangering with Call for, like, 20 years. But Call still doesn't have, like, as much faith in him as, say, Call has with Dietz, right? So Call comments that, Dietz is he's a good learner. He's a very careful observer. All of the experience that Dietz has, Dietz puts all of that experience into practice, whereas PeaEye's got all the same experience, but he's like, PeaEye, he still won't shoot unless he's got a perfect shot lined up. He still takes too much time. He's still too slow of a thinker. Like, he's like, P won't use his experience to the same effect as Dietz, but Call just chalks it up to the fact that, Dietz is just smarter or something like that. He's a better observer. He's got better instincts, right? Here, I think, is where he brings it back, and PeaEye does have all of those same good instincts, and he finally uses all of his good experience. Like, he puts it together that, I bet you that kid didn't take that shotgun because it's old and it's ugly and it's big, this kid only likes flashy looking, pretty guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I bet you he left that gun over there. If I can get to that gun, I know I'm not a good shot with a pistol, but an 8-gauge shotgun that's going to spread all these little pellets around, that's my best chance to get this kid, right?
Well,
he puts that together, and he also knows if I just charge this kid, he's going to get rattled, and he's going to start shooting, and he's going to miss, because that's what guys who get rattled do. He puts all that together, right? And I'm like, I'm so proud of you.
those guys are those guns, right?
Yeah.
Like Joey Garza is young, flash, new tech, from afar, all purpose, all precision, all thoughts, all engraved. And PeaEye, he's massive, right? Like, he's the tallest guy by far. Like, he's well over, from what they describe, he's got to be well over. He's probably pushing in 6'5", I think.
Tall and gangly, yeah.
Yeah, and from how he's described, he's old. He's not really worth looking at. Nobody's gonna pick him out of a store.
Good comparison.
But he just slowly spreads out, right? It's his spread out of work, it's spread out of love. It's just small little pellets everywhere that spreads out, that ends up taking this guy down.
Well, and that's a really good comparison. I hadn't even thought of that before. And I guess what's motivating PeaEye is love, and his dedication and his duty to his family. He's got to survive because he's got that family to go back to, right?
Mm-hmm.
This young kid, Joey Garza, he hates his family, hates his mom. He only kills and does what he does for his own selfish reasons, because he likes to rob trains and he likes to have a cave full of money and jewels sitting there, right?
And that's not really what it's about, right?
No, that's not what lifts you up in the end, right?
Yeah.
Just having all that stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny because the one thing I really like about PeaEye is, and you could say what you will about this one, and it's certainly the hint that he's kind of dull, but in some respects he's so dull he doesn't understand resentment and doesn't build it. Like, he never begrudges Dietz for knowing more. He never begrudges anybody for being better than him. It's not like, or even calling him out for things he can't do. He never does that. He never feels bad. He always, and even his wife, like, there's been other men in the book there's like, oh, well, who lets their wife go off and teach, and she's so hoity-toity now with her, her college degree or whatever, and I would never let my wife be out, blah, blah, blah. And he says, but I'm proud of my wife. I'm really proud of what she's done there, And he's even talks about how he doesn't understand how Call can send him these telegrams demanding he come ask, and he's never even come to see his family, and this family he's so proud of, right? Yeah. And it's so clear in the books that the kids are great, right? The kids are well-rounded. Like, these guys are doing a good job of their family and each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of turns out to be, I guess, the other character, Clara Forsyth, who, from the other book, Gus's old, his one old love from the book. Mm-hmm. She's the one, she takes Lorena in at that book, and she's actually the one who basically directs Lorena to go and choose PeaEye as her mate, as her husband. And Clara even tells her, you're going to have to propose to him, right? Mm-hmm. And nobody would have ever thought that PeaEye would have ended up with this great beauty, Lorena, and who was also this super quiet, super clamshell type of girl herself. Mm-hmm. And it was the insight, I guess, of Clara Forsyth, who up to that point hadn't really been all that redeeming in the books. But yeah, she's the one that sees through both of their, their walls and puts it together that, this man is good. He will probably be the most loyal to you, and you'll have to teach him how to be a husband, basically. Mm-hmm. But he's the one that'll learn how to do it. Okay.
Well, and and it's not very one-sided, because it's really surprising with that how serious Lorena takes her devotion to him, because it's not like, so contradictory to Clara with her husband. like Lorena picks him out of those sort of things, but you can see clearly they've developed it into a real love and a real respect on her side, because I think otherwise, if it was just one side, like I pick him because he's going to be these things, you wouldn't travel across the country to go bring him back. You wouldn't do that, right? So it's clear that the mutual respect that they have for each other, their feelings, their actions, and what they do to provide each other with stability is really there, right? Is really there. And when his kids, like you'll say, my kids are smarter than me already. They can all read or whatever. The older ones, he doesn't begrudge them that. He doesn't. He just,
Yeah, like he respects his kids, and it even says like his oldest daughter, who's 15, is already better at doing multiple tasks around the house and fixing stuff. And he's more than happy about that. Like where most men would not be that happy if they're being outshined by their own kids or whatnot. That would be a huge kind of a bit of a knock against your ego, right, as a guy. But PeaEye doesn't have an ounce of that in him. The better his kids are at things, the happier and prouder he is, right? He's that type of hero.
I just think, yeah, he's been heroic in several points. Like, even at the end, there's like, oh, PeaEye, he doesn't do this or he doesn't do that. He just, if you give him something, he'll do it. But if you recall back into Lonesome Dove, which is the second book he shows up in, because he shows up in Comanche Moon, they'll say, well, he just doesn't do anything outside of that. But there's a point in Lonesome Dove where somebody's was bitten, something happens in the river, and everybody's looking around because there's screams, and the first two people at that person that needs help are PeaEye and Gus. And at the end, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Is so scared, but he rushed into danger. Nobody told him. You've seen inklings that he had it in. And so we've gotten into too where has Call's leadership been a problem for other people? Like, because he's been so heavy-handed with everybody, which may have been good at the beginning, he's become where his type of leadership has been an impediment to the men, right? And that's become clear, right? Where he blossomed because Call didn't show up, and he knew it, and he knew he could do it and had to do it for this no matter what. And so I can really see that Call's leadership was good at first and then had become an impediment, and that his type of leadership overlooked when the men did things, right? He said, oh, these men are totally capable, but when did he ever tell people he was capable? Like, it's a thread going through all the books of, like, everybody knew when he was displeased.
Yeah, well...
Okay, sorry about that. The battery ran out. Anyway, we were talking about Call's leadership, and so what I was saying was that his leadership may have been good in the first place, in the first instance, and they really needed it because they had a lack of it, and so he was learning. But now it kind of held anybody from under him from blossoming into a good leader. They only were given exactly what Call could want from them, right?
Yeah, like Gus says in the first book, like basically that Call, like he's so good at his leadership, and like he's such a disciplinarian, and he works himself so hard that he puts the other men to shame, and the other men kind of feel that. So in a sense, that's kind of why the other men don't really step up too often when Call is around, because they all feel like there's no way they could measure up to him, right?
I'm not sure he would let them.
It's kind of funny how it turns out in the end for what the Call, isn't it?
Yeah, and where he ends up and who he ends up with, and it's really interesting in this book, Call's reflections on PeaEye and how little he actually put into him, like as a friend, as the guy that always shows up for him, that he just telegraphs, and then this guy leaves his family and shows up, you know, and it's like, he just, you know, he really does lack understanding of anybody but himself. Remember in the first book when Matilda says, oh, why does he go sit by himself or whatever? And she says, he doesn't even know why he does what he does.
Yeah. And
that's a reflection all the way through the book. And, you know, he's got no family, lives in a shack on Charles Goodnight's place. You know, he's got nothing. And it's funny, so you say that part where it says, oh, Kyle's 98% fight and I'm 46, and, you know, Dietz is 15 and PeaEye is 12. It's funny how that's seen as a negative thing, because really he's got no family, no home, no love, no friends, he's got no nothing, and that plays out at the end. He's got nothing but work.
Well, it's an interesting way that he puts it, right? So yeah, Call is 98% fight. Well, then that means, so he's only 2% of life and anything else, right? Mm-hmm. And all the other guys, like, you know, Gus figures that he's, you know, 40 odd whatever percent, and, you know, Gus is kind of, well, he's telling everybody that he's the most balanced, basically, and that PeaEye, yeah, you're only 12% fight or whatever, this and that. But look at how better that a guy like PeaEye does in life than Call.
And instantly what comes into my head is, does it matter what you're fighting for? Yeah. Like, Call's fighting because he's a killer, right? He's been hired to go kill this guy.
He's just a hired gun at this point, right? He's an old man with no family, no nothing. He's got nothing but fighting left, right? And he can barely do that anymore. Right?
Yeah, and there's a place for fighting, right? There's a place for protection. There's a place for probably violence, one could make sure. And we all agree in most societies, because there's never just you shouldn't kill. It's like, well, you're allowed to if you're going to protect yourself in most places, you know, and things like that. So we understand there's some sort of like equation there, right? So is it best to have a 98% fighter that fights like that is for money? And has nothing else, or a 12% fighter who's fighting for everything he can because he just is, you know, recognizes his importance in his family and that his family's important to him, right?
Yeah. It's kind of a tough duality, right? Like, because they kind of say multiple times in the books, like Call, like he is so one-dimensional. Like he literally can't do anything else but work and fight. That's all this guy can do. No. He doesn't even think about it. Like, and even like his one chance at love with the whore Maggie, who really loved him for some reason. He couldn't do it. No. And he couldn't even accept his own son, right? And that becomes a major point in the story. Yeah. And Call's character really kind of gets dressed down in the end because of that. And and look at in PeaEye. PeaEye comes out as kind of the winner out of all of this in the end. He comes out, he's got the family, he's got all these great kids, he's got the farm. He's not super prosperous, but he is probably as happy and contented of a family man as you can get. And that's what counts in the end.
He's the man that'll walk 100 miles naked. Yeah. And follow the spirit to do what needs to get done. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I just love this one. I feel so sad that...
And it's no surprise that that's the character you glommed onto. I hadn't even really put a lot of that together about PeaEye until reading this book, because it doesn't really come out in this one. You have to really think about it. That's interesting.
Oh, see, I was already enamored with him by that one, but I just think because it just tells me about people, anybody, and it's been a real lesson in me this week of like leadership and service to your family and service to your community. It's really come with, sort of some of the The political stuff going on in our province right now, and some of it I'm with, is that like how we can, the ordinary person with strength and determination, but the one that has purpose of service can just rise. They can rise, you know, and they can be the rising tide that lifts all ships, you know.
Actually, it's funny. It makes me think of one of my favorite lyrics from a song, and it's an old NoFX song, and the lyric is, sometimes the smallest, softest voice carries the grandest solutions. Right? And who else but PeaEye is kind of just, in a way, has that, right? It's not necessarily using his voice, but just using his character and his inner strength that he has, and his devotion and his sense of duty.
It's no mistake that he walked 100 miles with no shoes.
Yeah.
And had no shoes when he picked up that gun and defended himself and his family.
Oh, good point. That he refused. Like, you know what? You're not getting my boots, Mr. Slick Joey Garza. You're not getting my boots again. Well, it's also funny that he actually, in an effort to trick Garza, I didn't actually read that just now, but he actually takes his boots off and gives Garza his boots, or gives, Famous Shoes his boots, in an effort to trick Garza into making him think that he's going to take off. When really that's just part of the ruse, and PeaEye is not ever known for tricking anybody, right? He put a lot of thought into that.
And it doesn't matter, because those are only a few steps shoeless. This man has already walked 100 miles. Yeah. He knows this path.
Yeah.
He's done this before.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hold it together, but I just feel so much for this character. He's just really attached to me in terms of what perseverance and purpose can do for an individual. And it also just reminds me that, with all the talk of experts now, and there's this, and there's a young fellow I work with and I see this in this generation, is like, you can't just do something, you gotta YouTube do this something, you got a YouTube personality doing this something. And I don't think that's where it's at. I think it's that methodical, you can count on personality that shows up, that has purpose outside of themselves, that will always rise.
Nicely put.
All right.
Good place to leave it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
Thanks again for joining us. That was a really emotional one for me. I really like that. I really appreciate all these talks that I get to have with you.
Yeah, me too. Still, no matter how many times we have conversations about this, we still pick out more new things that I think we just talked about off the cuff just now. Even just talking about it, things just come to you, right? That's how deep these characters are that this guy's written. Like, he's absolutely genius. He's so genius that you don't know you're reading genius as you're reading it. It's crazy. It's crazy.
For sure.
That good.
For sure. Well, thank you.
Larry McMurtry.
Yeah, Larry McMurtry. Again, if there's anybody that would like to also join us in these conversations, that are a fan of these books, please get a hold of us at the Human Responsibilities Tribunal at protonmail.com.
Can people give feedback?
Yeah, you can give feedback in the comments. That would be great. Or if you have any other ideas, that would also be good.
We're pretty amateurs at this.
Yeah, we are. But I do think it's amazing. And even if you don't want to provide that feedback, I really do hope that you take the time to read or listen to these books, as I think there's a lot to them that's really inspirational and insightful and purposeful. Yeah. So thanks for that. We hope you have a good day, and we'll talk to you next time.